So in recent times with the last update, we've started to see more of the Triangle Adept A skill. With Titania getting a new weapon called the Draconic Poleaxe, there was a good amount of complaints of it just being an emerald axe with some extra might. Not everyone was disappointed, but it was interesting to see discussion about how players felt about Triangle Adept in general, and why it may be lackluster compared to other skill effects. Fast forward a few weeks, and from the newest Fae channel we learned that the Asker Trio were getting new weapon upgrades, while Alphonse's Folk Vanguard got a much needed tweak to its base effect. Again, there was disappointment in learning its special upgrade was just Triangle Adept 3. In a third instance, we also got a new staff weapon called TRILEMMA+, and it inflicts Triangle Adept 3 on enemies. Why have we been getting so many effects with Triangle Adept all of a sudden? I have no clue, but it did make me want to talk about it more so we can discuss why it's a skill effect that seems to have fallen out of favor for some players. Before we continue, I have to thank Amino for sponsoring this video. Amino is a mobile network filled with communities for every interest out there, and the Fire Emblem Amino is one of my favorite communities. Here you can find so many talented artists, writers, and just passionate people willing to share their interest in the Fire Emblem series. For example, I like reading character analyses because Fire Emblem just has so many characters across all of its games, and it's tough to know everything about every character. Here's one on Tormod, a mage you'll meet in the Tellius games. I also enjoy the featured feed as it's a great way for me to catch up on standout posts, and I always enjoy looking at fan art. Looks like our newest character from Fire Emblem Heroes is quite popular. Now in celebration of our Asker Trio getting new weapon upgrades soon, I'd like to challenge you guys to share with me your best builds for Alphonse, Sharena, and Anna. These must be builds you've actually given to them in-game, so submit an in-game screenshot and a description if you want. I'll be picking a few to showcase in a future video. To participate in this challenge, click on the link in the description or my pinned comment to download Amino on iOS or Android, search for the Fire Emblem Amino, join, and then you can either search for my profile, which will have my post listed, or use a direct link to the post I will include in the description. Now let's continue with the video. To make sure everyone is on the same track, let's quickly review what the weapon Triangle does and how Triangle Adept affects it. The weapon Triangle is one of the defining features of the Fire Emblem franchise. Swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords. While it's not as simple as rock, paper, scissors, the basic idea is that you get an advantage when you fight an enemy who is weak to your weapon type. Fire Emblem Heroes follows the same idea, but it's split into 3 different colors. Red beats green, green beats blue, and blue beats red. When you fight an enemy and you have the weapon Triangle advantage, your unit will gain a plus 20% boost to their attack stat, which is not the same as 20% more damage. If your unit has the weapon Triangle advantage, then the enemy must have the weapon Triangle disadvantage, and that means that they get their attack stat reduced by minus 20%. Same color matchups are considered even, with neither unit or foe getting a bonus. When you introduce Triangle Adept 3 on one of the units, then the effects of the weapon Triangle become stronger and more pronounced. If you have weapon Triangle advantage, you get another plus 20% to your attack stat, which stacks to become plus 40% in total. Similarly, a unit with the disadvantage gets penalized even more with another minus 20% for a total of minus 40%. Important to note that you cannot exceed plus or minus 40%, so it does not matter if both units are using Triangle Adept. Only one unit needs to have Triangle Adept 3 for it to affect the weapon Triangle. To see just how powerful having the weapon Triangle advantage can be, we'll have a look at a matchup between Alm and his double line upgraded Falchion and adult Tiki. Then we'll have a look at Alm vs NOWI with and without Triangle Adept 3. Falchion is effective against dragons like Tiki, so Alm gets a 1.5 times multiplier to his attack stat, or plus 50%. Let's assume this Alm has Death Blow 3, so a neutral Alm attacking should have 55 attack to start. We'll try to give Tiki a fighting chance by giving her a plus defense nature and close defense 3 for a total of 40 HP and 44 defense. When Alm initiates, he will have an attack stat of 82 after the plus 50% boost. 82 attack minus 44 defense equals 38 damage, and Alm's double line upgrade lets him attack 2 times, so Tiki gets absolutely destroyed. Alm is doing 76 points of damage and Tiki only has 40 HP. Let's replace Tiki with NOWI, a blue dragon who has the weapon Triangle advantage over Alm. We won't be helping NOWI here, so she only has 45 HP and 30 defense. Alm still gets a plus 50% boost to his attack, but now you have to subtract minus 20% due to the weapon Triangle disadvantage. He will end up with 66 attack, and he deals 36 damage to NOWI 2 times. This is 72 points of damage, and NOWI's 45 HP still doesn't stand a chance. To showcase the power of Triangle Adept, that's the only thing we are adding to NOWI for round 2. Alm now gets hit with a minus 40% penalty, and that means even after his Falchion's effectiveness multiplier, he only ends up with 50 attack. 50 attack minus 30 defense means Alm deals 20 damage each hit for a total of 40 points of damage. This time, NOWI survives. Because the weapon Triangle involves a percentage increase or decrease, its effects are quite noticeable. By gaining a 40% attack boost, a unit can deal incredible amounts of damage to one color group. As we just saw, inflicting minus 40% attack on the enemy also means you take a lot less damage. In our example, Alm had an additional plus 50% attack boost for himself, but without it he would have dealt less damage in the first place. In the hands of the player, you can set up advantageous matchups really easily because the enemy AI will just attack whatever is in front of them. You should also be trying to get weapon triangle advantage at all times, so ideally you can avoid the negatives of Triangle Adept. However, that's not always possible, and getting caught in a bad matchup with a disadvantage basically means you sacrifice any fighting chance to win against the color group you are weak to. Overlapping attack ranges are also a problem. If you have a green unit with Triangle Adept, but the enemy has a blue and a red unit overlapping their attack ranges, then you're most likely going to die to the red unit, even if you end up destroying the blue unit. If you didn't have Triangle Adept, maybe you could have survived both encounters. The benefits of Triangle Adept are really powerful, but it's a double-edged sword because it's extremely punishing if you make a mistake and end up in a disadvantageous matchup. Now, since we are discussing Triangle Adept, I do want to take a little detour and talk about Cancel Affinity because it does counter Triangle Adept. Cancel Affinity is an extremely confusing skill to understand, but it can be useful. It has two effects. The first one being that it neutralizes the extra weapon triangle advantage boost granted by Triangle Adept effects on the unit themselves. Basically, don't use Triangle Adept with Cancel Affinity, it will just get cancelled out. The second part of Cancel Affinity affects the enemy. If your unit has a disadvantage against the enemy, then reverse the weapon triangle boost granted by the enemy's skills. Essentially, the enemy must be using Triangle Adept, a gem weapon, or be afflicted by Trilemma. By reversing the extra boost from Triangle Adept, you cancel out the natural multiplier of the weapon triangle. I know it sounds confusing. The natural multiplier is plus 20%, and reversing the extra boost from Triangle Adept 3 gets you minus 20%, which means they cancel out. You essentially get a matchup as if you are fighting a unit of the same color. The new staff weapon we just got, called TRILEMMA+, tries to solve the issue of Cancel Affinity only working if the enemy is using Triangle Adept. Trilemma inflicts a new status on the enemy which grants them Triangle Adept 3. This means if you pair a healer with TRILEMMA+ with a teammate with Cancel Affinity, you can create even matchups by forcing the enemy to have Triangle Adept 3. For example, a red unit with Cancel Affinity has the following matchups when Trilemma is on the enemy. Against green units, they still get that plus 40% attack, which is really good. Red units and colorless units are still even matchups, so there is no boost. Normally, you would expect blue foes to have the advantage of plus 20 attack, but with Cancel Affinity reversing the effects of Trilemma, you can get even matchups against blue units too. Is this a new meta strategy? I'm not really sure. However, you can see this interaction in the game for yourselves from the Inferno difficulty of Chapter 11-5. Try to bait Levantine with a blue unit and watch them get hit by Maribo's TRILEMMA+STAFF. Suddenly, your blue unit may end up dead against a red unit. It's an interesting tactic, and at least it makes Cancel Affinity a little less dependent on what skills the enemy has. Getting back on track, the recent negative feelings about Triangle Adept has come mainly from the new weapon upgrades. The 3 gem weapons, the Ruby Sword, the Sapphire Lance, and the Emerald Axe each grant Triangle Adept 3, and that can be useful by freeing up the A slot for another skill. Titania's Draconic Poleaxe has a base effect the same as an Emerald Axe, but it just has an extra plus 4 might. When some players saw this, they were pretty disappointed. For Titania specifically, I think a popular weapon choice for her was a Slaying Axe, and people didn't like how Draconic Poleaxe locks her into being a blue counter. Similarly, Alphonse's Folkvanger is going to be getting an update, and while its base effect is actually quite nice, the special upgrade you can get for Divine Dew is just Triangle Adept 3. This announcement was also met with mixed feelings, and it just seems like Intelligent Systems is trying to push Triangle Adept and Cancel Affinity back into the spotlight. Here are some of the reasons I think people were more or less disappointed with Triangle Adept on new weapons. By having Triangle Adept, you gain immense power and can be a great counter to one color group, but the double-edged sword nature of the skill can be off-putting to some. You kind of lock a unit into a certain role, and while they can succeed really well in the right situations, if you make one wrong move, then that unit is most likely dead without a fighting chance. Are you willing to have to play around avoiding those disadvantageous matchups at all costs? For a lot of units, you don't have to take the risk of the double-edged sword because damage specials can overpower the weapon triangle disadvantage. You don't need Triangle Adept to be successful against a single color, and with specials being able to do so much damage, you can easily score KOs against units you are weak to. I also think a lot of people just like triggering a ton of specials versus Triangle Adept's playstyle, which is very rock, paper, scissors. It's satisfying to take no damage with Triangle Adept equipped, but all that matters is that the enemy ends up dead, and special procs can easily change a bad matchup. Now, the biggest reason I think people just aren't thrilled about Triangle Adept is that we just have so many powerful skills and builds dedicated to spamming as many special procs as possible. Why should I only have good matchups against one color when my super unit can KO any color? Sure, they may take more damage when they have the disadvantage, but again, all that really matters is that the enemy ends up dead. Along with skills that reduce special cooldown, we also have extra ways to get true damage during special activations with skills like Wrath or the Wo Dao type weapons. Basically, I think specials just do too much damage and can be charged way too fast now. Cooldown reduction is possibly too good these days, and it's a good effect because it can work in pretty much any situation. It's a great neutral skill. For example, if Titania and Alphonse replaced their Triangle Adept effects on their weapons with special cooldown -1, then I think more people would have been happier. It does get boring to throw a special cooldown reduction on every single weapon, but there is only one counter to it, and that's the Guard B skill. Maybe instead of more weapons and skills with cooldown reduction, we need more effects like Guard. That might not be an elegant solution, however, because the game would probably be super boring without fun special procs. It's just some food for thought. At the end of the day, I don't think Triangle Adept is a bad skill, but I would agree with the sentiment that it's quite overshadowed by more powerful skills. A skill like Steady Breath has proven to be pretty powerful, and building around it leaves you less open to a huge glaring matchup problem. I think Triangle Adept is still a really good budget skill since you astronomically improve a unit's combat power in certain matchups. For a mode like Arena Assault where you can counterpick the enemy team, if they have two powerful axe users, then fielding a unit with a Ruby Sword will probably be able to take care of both of them. For instances where you know what weapon types the enemy has, Triangle Adept can be a strong hard counter. In a mode like regular Arena, it might not be as useful compared to building a team with members who can go toe to toe with any color matchup. Well, that's all I have to say on this subject, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to check out the Fire Emblem Amino community, download links in the description, and participate in the best Ask Your Trio build challenge by sharing a screenshot of your builds on my Amino blog post. I look forward to seeing who has the strongest bench lord. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.